Hello, and in this video we will talk about how the Coptic Church is not as persecuted as it is made to be in the news, right? Whenever they talk about it. Now, I want to say a disclaimer. I do not deny the fact that the Coptic Church is indeed persecuted to some extent. What I'm denying is the extent which is presented to us in the news. I will also say I'm not Muslim, I do not support Islam nor Jihad, but I will agree with them on some of the points about this topic. And you will see where. Now, to start off with, what is the Coptic Church? The Coptic Church is one of the Oriental Orthodox churches, which is really an umbrella term because not all of them are in communion with each other, but that's another topic. And they're different from the Orthodox from Europe by their Christology. So no, the Copts are not the same as the Russians, they are not the same religion, they are not the same as the Greeks, Romanians, or whatever else. So let's get that out of the way. They are different religions. Now, I'm going to talk about how Islam and the Copts even started out to crash each other. So first we have to go back to when the Council of Chalcedon, to that era when it was happening. Two groups arose: the Jacobites and the Melkites. The Melkites, not referring to the modern Catholic Melkite Church, but the Diophysites, and the Jacobites, the Miaphysites or Monophysites. Right? Is Monophysite is just an umbrella term. I do not equate them to big monophysite. No, those groups did not clash in a peaceful way, right? They obviously were very aggressive towards each other. In fact, the Coptics killing Saint Flavian, martyring him at the robber council of Chalcedon. Not only the Jacobites will later become the the current Coptic Church, they also were aggressive towards the pagans. If you don't know, the mob which killed Hypatia, they were not Roman Christians. No, they were Coptic or Jacobite Christians. Right? They came to be Coptic after. So what do we have here? We have, after the Council of Chalcedon, a group which is isolated from Rome, from the Byzantines or Eastern Rome, and which is isolated from the pagans because they were also very hostile towards them, since they had those mobs, as I talked about, which killed, mistreated, or beaten, much like a form of proto-jihad, right? So, we'll fast forward 2 centuries or three. We get to Muhammad, to the Mohammedans, to Islam. You have this Muslim mob which wants to attack Rome, which wants to take their land, which they ultimately will take. They will take provinces from Asia and the Middle East, right? North Africa, where the Copts are. So they start to attack the Romans. And in their help, now the Copts come to help since they want autonomy from the Roman Empire, because they had a lot of problem with Saint Justinian, right? So they had a lot of resentment for us. So they choose to ally themselves with the Muslims, right? So at that point, the Muslims and the Copts were at good odds with each other. The Muslims, after they conquered those regions, provinces, they made the Melkites, meaning the Chalcedonians, leave the places from Egypt, Syria, right? Either directly or indirectly. And so And so the Copts took over the churches which were left there. They became the mainstream form of Christianity there in Egypt, uh, directly from because of the Muslims, because some of the Muslims, right, uh, helped the church because they wanted to, the Coptic church, and others indirectly by just persecuting the Melkites, right? So it's more nuanced. Right, so we have this period where they were at good odds, but once the Muslims got what they wanted to from the Romans, they started persecuting the Copts because they were kuffars. No, the persecution of Christians also is due to the Assyrians, but I will talk later about them since the historians influenced how the Muslims see the Christians, the real Christians, around the 9th century, right, with their scholars. But I will get into that in another video. Now, no, since they started being adults somewhere in the Middle Ages, right in the early Middle Ages, they started being adults with each other, the Copts and the Muslims. And indeed, that's when the persecution started. A lot of people were killed, the Copts, but some of their martyrs were even fake back then, and I will explain why. And here I will agree with the Muslims. If you look at what they were calling martyrs, like Coptic cities being exterminated, right? That's the Coptic claim at that time, somewhere in the 12th century. Well, if you actually look at the sources of their persecution, those cities were not exterminated, they just were forced to pay jizya. So the persecution of Copts was not as it was made to be even back then, right? They always had fake martyrs. It's interesting how they accuse us of having fake martyrs, but that's another thing. And it kept being in this way. Now we are with the British Empire, which pushed, right? We fast forward to a couple of hundred years, which pushed a radical version of Islam, uh, right, to further their to aid because this was part of their plan. It wasn't just plan to stir up the Copts. It was also with Israel. Whatever. That's another topic. So those jihadists furthermore started persecuting their church. Right, that's true. Nobody will deny that ISIS does attack Coptic churches. Now, we get to the point of the 21 Egyptian martyrs, and not just them, or Egyptian, African, none of them was non-Egyptian, right? No. So those Muslims did indeed persecute, Copts in the 20th and 21st century. However, a lot of those quote-unquote martyrs did not actually exist. Those, there were false scenarios, false settings made up by the British and other people, instead to paint the Muslims as worse than they are in Egypt. So you got things like the 21 African martyrs, which were not actually killed. That's the interesting part. They were not actually killed. I mean, it's very likely that those martyrs are fake because a lot of their martyrs are fake, right? Uh, and so it was used as a tool, as a propaganda tool against the Muslims, to stir up further more conflict to lead to real persecution. So what we have is a church which consistently lied about martyrs throughout history and still lies today, but it makes on the news and whatever. No. The conclusion is that yes, persecution exists in the Coptic Church, but the situation is a lot more nuanced, and they are also liars. No, I hope you had a great night, or a great day, good evening, great whatever it is. Goodbye. God bless.